So in this section, we'll talk how will we decide what goals to pursue? What should we do? So a major question is, yes, we have a long-term goal in mind, but now what to do to get there? What are the concrete, smaller plans that'll get us that long-term goal? And what we will see is that we must look to the outer world to see what it is we actually can do and where we can actually go. And to do this, we look both in terms of ourselves and that larger world. Big idea. Not all plans will work for everybody, much less us. So not all plans are going to work for us. So what do we need to know? Well, when deciding among different plans and setting reasonable goals, we have to know our organization. What are our brands, our product lines, our history with different groups such as customers, employees, leadership, and so many more. Things like capital and finances, facilities, processes, R&D, responsive organizational structure, and other resources. Similar to our organization, what are our target markets, potential and current? Many other groups, competitors, more general industry or market, government, organizations, lots of groups, and other trends and conditions. Things like the natural conditions, legal, political, social, competitive, lots of different things will influence what we can do. So a big question we have is, what are we as an organization? So knowing who we are is a key part of our strategy and knowing where we can actually go. Ideally, plans should be founded on what we call competitive advantage. So a competitive advantage in serving needs to generate customer satisfaction means we're better than the competitor in serving those needs. Meanwhile, a sustainable competitive advantage is all about that we're better than the competitor at serving those needs and they cannot quickly or easily copy. So good plans are based on the competitive advantage we have at serving customer needs for the long term. A major way we therefore evaluate, that is, judge whether strategies will maintain a good fit, is whether they are based on a sustainable competitive advantage for us, of course. So one of the ways we do this is not only just our resources, but our competencies. What can we do with those resources? Who you are as a company and what you are good at is important to know what types of strategies are more likely to work. So you want to look at your organization's competencies. What a firm does best, or at least extremely well. What are you good at? What parts of your organization or business rank very well? What would you want the local discussion boards to be saying about you? So here's a list of some of the major competencies an organization might have. And it's by no means a complete list. And as we've discussed, competencies are a major source of competitive advantage. After all, your strategic goal is not just matching or developing any fit between the firm's resources and the opportunities of the external market. You want it to be a fit that is both enduring and surpasses those competitors or the customer just doing nothing, of course. Your efforts are wasted if your distinguishing characteristic is quickly copied or if the competitor still beats you. So in sum, you don't just want to have a fit between your goals and the environment. You want a lasting fit despite competition or other trends. Core competencies are a potential source of competitive advantage for the firm, so that's why we care about them. A major part of strategic planning is figuring out where to commit your resources within your organization. Often a firm has multiple product units in its portfolio. So for example, a strategic business unit, SBU, is a relatively independent division of the company that has its own set of products and target markets as well as control over its own mission and resources. So for example, Disney has its movies, park, merchandising, music label, cruise lines, and so forth. Each within those has a mixture of brands and products, and so they clump different things together. What happens when you have multiple products or divisions in your organization is, well, you gotta decide what you want to devote your resources to. So this portfolio matrix is a useful tool to figure out, well, how to devote those resources. This model you see here is called specifically the Boston Consulting Group Portfolio Matrix. Okay, so I don't expect you to always remember that name, but the 4 terms it uses are very common. So this matrix classifies each SBU, or product, depending on what they go for, by the market's growth rate and our relative market share right here. So the assumption is that market share tends to mean more profit. So the 4 terms we have are stars, question marks, dogs, and cash cows. So a star is a market leader in a growing market. So stars usually have large profits but need cash to finance that growth. A marketing tactic is to protect your market share by reinvesting earnings in product improvement, distribution, promotion, and efficiency. So you strive to capture new users as they enter the market. The idea is you want to one day be a cash cow. Cash cows generate more cash than is needed to maintain the market share we have. So it is in a low growth market, but you have so much dominant market share, it's a wonderful moneymaker. The marketing strategy is to maintain market dominance by being the price leader and by making technological improvements or whatever it is you need to basically just maintain where you're at. So you allocate excess cash that it generates to high growth prospects. So those would be a cash cow would be something like Happy Meals for McDonald's for years and years. Next, we have what's called a question mark, sometimes called a problem child. So that means we have low market share, but in a high growth market. Our low market share means we have very poor profit margins because it needs more cash to maintain that market share, much less grow it. Since, well, we only have lower market share, so we don't have a lot of leverage, we don't have a lot of capabilities. And without the cash, it will convert to dog status. So with a question mark, it's encouraged to either invest to gain better market share, acquire competitors, or drop the unit. In essence, you want to try to make it a better margin item, or you just drop the unit. Finally, we have a dog. That has low growth potential, and we only have a small relative market share. Most organizations that find their unit is a dog will just drop it and they leave the market. 2 ways are to divest and harvest, where you either take as much as you can get and run, or just completely abandon. So here's an example from your book. Take a look at these SBUs for Apple. Where do you think each might go? So go ahead and pause me if you want to think about it. Or, here we go, if you want to read the book. The book, you might have already seen it, but the market and Apple's product mix is always changing. But you can see how you can kind of guess, or at least consider, where you might put it in these. So what situational data do you think has led the book authors to place them where they are? In prior years, we can consider how the iPod was a cash cow, but we know it became their dog because people can now turn to their smartphones for their music. In addition, the way people access their music is very different, where we don't necessarily anticipate buying album collections even. Instead, people often use streaming sites or purchase access to libraries. So what do you think? What should be moved, if any? What might remain today? Where would products like their MacBooks or iMacs go? Or the Apple Watch? So, lots of good questions for you to think about. Another example. Remember, the business portfolio analysis is all about letting us compare SBUs and products for our strategies. So normally, if an SBU is a dog, we know to harvest and divest. But what if it's a question mark? Well, we may wish to let it become a dog. Then again, enough money, the question mark could become a star or cash cow. What to do? So be careful. Don't pull the plug too fast on products. I imagine some of you have seen when firms are reluctant to invest, and once they do, they're reluctant to scrap a plan. An offering is struggling. Is it a dog or a question mark? Sometimes it takes a while for something to take hold, especially when you've invested a lot of money. A prior student team studied Yoplait. Yoplait was having trouble getting their Greek yogurt line off the ground. Fage, Chobani, and Dan's Oikos brand had a lot more market share and were a lot more memorable to consumers. Should Yoplait just withdraw? Well, the tricky thing is Yoplait already invested in product development and had already launched these in the stores. There's been so much money already invested. There is often a strong push to see if there is something that can make it work. So you can take a look at the extra notes on the slide if you want to look up more about what happened, and namely, Yoplait looked instead to its other product line, or SBU depending on how they organize themselves, its original product line. They have since reformulated their original product and have turned to gaining market share through it instead. Although Yoplait Greek does still exist, what they did instead is, we don't have to kill it, but opportunities await in some of the others. In some, it is simple to see where something may be in the chart, but the actual decision to throw away something that took a great deal of investment is harder. Many companies are not always that agile and may not always be able to immediately trash a poor plan. Instead, they are likely to see if adjustments can be made. It's not a zero-sum game, so think in terms of what SBUs or product lines do for each other. And so, maybe not Greek may not be their top brand, but it helps their others. Another big question for the portfolio analysis is when and where to make cuts. When comparing SBUs, you don't want to drain resources too early. Here's an example where a team wanted to help a question mark, but it became apparent they want to kill a cash cow for it. Usually, you want to keep cash cows because they make extra money and they can go toward your future stars or cash cows. So this prior marketing team studied the Wii U. This was some years back when the Wii U video game console was relatively new, had very few games, and was showing poor sales. The team had a bit of a hard start, so the Wii U game console was not actually their first choice for a project, and I kind of suspect there may have been a knowledge gap for this product and market amongst their team. So they found the Wii U was not doing very well. But they said, hey, one of the key features of the product is that it has this cool gamepad right here. That's the handheld part with a screen you can use versus just the usual controller. At the time, games were still kind of sparse. Their idea was to shut down the Nintendo's DS branch, their handheld game console, because it was, as they said, cannibalizing the handheld sales. Yet the Nintendo DS was an extensive source of our cash flow and did a brisk business for both the handheld device and included also an extensive library of games. So it's important to take a hard look at the business units. How do the products actually interact with each other? Are they actually substitutes where you feel only one is needed to do the job? Or are they separate products used on separate occasions or by different segments? That's a question they didn't quite have answered when they first proposed axing the DS for the Wii U. And data indicated users were fine with both a home and handheld console. They just weren't convinced on the Wii U. For your own projects, remember to always ask around, even before you start conducting your research, so that you know what to ask. Even if you are a die-hard video game player, you may not be a die-hard video game player in all ways. And ultimately, they and Nintendo were on something. The later Nintendo Switch console would give us that handheld and large screen play that actually made grab-and-go play possible, and it now made sense for a hybrid home and handheld. But you have to work with the decisions you have now so you can survive to make those next stars and cash cows. So in sum, be cautious when comparing how one SBU might be affecting the other, and make sure to do that research. So the other half of the strategic fit is the external world we respond to, the market opportunities and environment in which we operate. The next handful of chapters will focus on that external environment. And for now, a key part of our strategy is that you'll need to do an environmental scan to see what kinds of opportunities you have or threats to respond to. For now, let's do a preview of the environmental scan and situational analysis that you'll be able to fill in better as you go through these chapters. So, the SWOT analysis. The situation SWOT analysis helps firms identify their advantages and how they can best navigate the external environment. What is it that we do better given our individual strengths and external environment than our competitors? Strengths and weaknesses are an internal assessment from the perspective of a particular firm or organization. It's what is specific about your company or whoever happens to be conducting the analysis. So you. Opportunities and threats are an external environment assessment. These are parts that aren't specific to just your company. These are factors that influence you, your competitors, and everyone else in the marketplace. So a SWOT analysis may be done at any point, and it's wise to do them early and often. So first, let's look at each in turn. A strength is something your firm does well. It may be a process, patent, or some other product-related activity like customer service, product delivery, or channel support. It may be something like any of those competencies. Well done and well-developed strengths can lead to a distinct competitive advantage, in fact. So, and as example of this is Coca-Cola tends to have a lot of resources, it has a strong brand image, and memorable brand logos. Next, weaknesses are areas where the firm performs less well than competitive firms. These are areas where the firm needs to improve, or at least not compete head-to-head with better performing organizations. So for example, Coca-Cola drinks often have a high sugar content, and Coca-Cola's brand names has declining value where it's memorable but not quite worth as much as it used to be. Next, opportunities. These are events, conditions, or situations in the external environment that are particularly well suited or attractive to the way a firm does business or is planning to do business. So the firm tries to match its strengths to opportunities that emerge, that are emerging or will emerge within the planning period. So for example, it may be something like new markets for Coke due to rising incomes, new technology that lets all drink companies dispense drinks differently. Finally, threats. These are events or conditions in the external environment that are not well suited or attractive to a way a firm does business or is planning to do business, so they're negative. So companies try to avoid threats or minimize their impact. So for example, healthiness trends push back against any and all processed or sugary drink brands. And so as a hint, don't just write what you'll do to respond when we write these up. To be consistent, each entry should be the factor itself and then your response. So I know a lot of you, not a lot of you personally, but a common mistake is opportunities. You guys just jump right in. You are all so excited, but hold on. For each of these, you concentrate on the force itself and then your response. So in sum, a SWOT analysis is a way for a firm to see what types of opportunities there are and what should best match the firm, or rather what would best match the firm. It is a tool that should be used continually and not just at the beginning of the process. Here's some example from the book for Ben and Jerry's Ice Cream. Note how the way they are written, it enforces whether it is internal or external to the firm. For example, a growing demand for quality ice cream or product quality is a particular consumer trend that all firms may experience. Therefore, it is external to Ben & Jerry's. However, what if it was written as Ben & Jerry's current customers have strong demand for product quality? That may be better to consider more as an internal factor if we are Ben & Jerry's. Something specific that Ben & Jerry's must consider when perhaps they choose to launch a new product or alter another part of their marketing mix. So key thing to remember, notice how they identify the factors at work that explain our current situation as it stands right now. We do not just directly leap into what we should do based on it. So slow down. We got to talk those factors first. We got to lay out the factors themselves and what we think the situation is and get consensus on that first before we build consensus on what we're doing and what we think might happen. So quick quiz. Which of the following would a SWOT analysis classify as an opportunity for Microsoft? A. Microsoft has a great deal of cash available for marketing strategies. B. Microsoft develops new patented technology that makes its software run faster. C. European trade regulators consider rulings that would require Microsoft to develop a new version of Windows for its market. D. Emerging markets in Asia and Africa show increased demand for computers and software. E. The company hires an expert in online advertising. So what do you think? So in a SWOT analysis, opportunities are external to the company and provide a favorable advantage. So best answer is D. Emerging markets in Asia and Africa show increased demand. This is the best answer because it's clearly an external trend and something positive. So A and B, these are strengths because they're specific to Microsoft and positive. C, it is external, but it seems like it is written as a threat, something that's not very good. E is less clear, whether it's meant to be an opportunity or a weakness. So we don't do things in-house. So that's a maybe, but then the strongest answer is D. So let's end this section with an activity. Now you try. So I want you to go ahead, pick a brand you know, or an organization, anything that could benefit from some strategic planning. Number 2, brainstorm a few ideas for each of those 4 categories: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Now brainstorm what the organization should do based on each now that you have those. And tip, you should have 2 parts to each entry, the factor itself and a potential response. So here's an example. Let's go with an in-home bakery caterer. So this cake is actually by Let's Eat Cake by Alex. So here's some examples. I'm not saying this is for Alex and Let's Eat Cake by Alex, but just some examples. Strength. Head baker is skilled at making whimsical cakes. So that's the factor. And then in response, we can offer to markets looking for whimsical cakes, take advantage of visual social media. Weakness. It's an in-home bakery, so need to time things with the household. So response, review setup for scheduled design and baking time for emergency jobs. Opportunity example, birthday party market wants more interesting cakes. So our response, we can offer more customized cakes that exhibit technology or whimsical aesthetics. And a threat, increasing number of customers with concern over common baking ingredients. So practice and develop more recipes with better trusted substitutes. So alternatives to food coloring, wheat flour, cow's milk, and nuts. So in sum, go ahead and try it out. It doesn't have to be a fancy brand. It could be something like a friend's side business, somewhere you volunteer for, a house of worship you attend, or even perhaps your own brand as a professional. So I invite you to give it a shot. And so with that, our next section will be about goals and objectives and how we measure performance. And in the meantime, I hope you'll give this SWOT analysis a try and that you're having a good day or evening so far, and that whatever ideas you have, run with them, see where they take you, and have a great time. Take care.